everyone. Welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's still waiting for me to pick up all 6 million skulls in the Paris Catacombs.
Tim Longo.
This time I decided to pick on myself.
Good. Yeah. Are you making a pile of skulls someplace? Then you kind of...
No, it's just there's supposed to be about 6 million bodies down there, and I apparently am just taking my sweet time making it through this part of the game because I am still not past the catacombs.
Yeah, it just dawned on me because we were talking in pre-show that doing that section stealth, you're doing stealth and non-lethal as well?
I am also doing non-lethal, yes.
Oh my goodness. How do you...
Although I believe I've accidentally killed somebody with a lucky shot with a dart, because at some point my dart gun switched over to regular darts. I'm like, why aren't they doing that weird animation thing they do when they are like, you know, they sleep, they go several times before they actually fall down. If you hit them with a sleep dart. And for a while there they weren't doing it, and I didn't figure out this was back in the shipyard. I could not figure out why. And finally I looked, and at some point the ammo just switched.
Oh man.
Don't know why. So I probably haven't had a lethal playthrough. It's so hard to tell the way I'm playing.
Yeah.
Because there are no trackers for any, obviously they're tracking internally, but they don't externalize any of that stuff, which is something I feel like has changed just in game design period, is that these days, if we track anything, we tell you about it. I think that this really goes back to Fable. Remember how absurd some of the stats they had on Fable's stats page were, like how many lines of code had been run, and just ridiculous. And of course that was completely made up, or what have you, just bizarre stats that they had. How many pies have you eaten? I mean, just like page upon page upon page of stats. I guess Metal Gear does that as well. Metal Gear Solid, I think, shows you a lot of data.
At the end,
ones. Yeah. At the end. This was more at any time, just on the pause screen or whatever. I think that it would do it for Fable, but in general, I don't feel like this game really wants to show you that stuff. It's more about, I don't really care how you got here. You just have to live with your decisions and deal with what you have to face next, which is really refreshing in a way when you tend to play games that just show you everything that they're measuring. So yeah, interesting.
I wonder
why I like it.
Yeah, it's there's a certain freedom to that. I wonder if what kind of conversations they had about that topic, and whether they had a hopeful intention at some point. Maybe they would track more, or if that was a very intentional decision to not track, because it also could have been just a product of the time where that just wasn't something
that never thought about it.
Yeah, or weren't willing to devote resources to that, or it got cut or something like that, because it wasn't deemed necessary at the time, but now, especially
and
age of
achievements. Right. Their UI page is already pretty full. there's tabs for everything. There's not a lot of room left there for miscellany.
Well, something kind of related to that that I forgot that they had is on images you can add notes, a little bit like Ultima Underworld, and I haven't really. I guess I could have used it, but I haven't really felt like I needed to the way I'm playing. But it goes back to some of the conversation we had with Ultima, just kind of that self-motivated, like take care of yourself kind of scenario versus auto mapping or auto notes or highlighting things. It's that usability topic that we come back to often. Really just about how far do you go, and it's funny to go back, like you said, and play these games and then have it be refreshing, because there's so much hand holding these days and automation. So at one point, I think the reason you brought it up in pre-show is that the lack of a map in certain sections can be frustrating, but then it's sort of this interesting pro-con situation of,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
mean,
do I miss it or not, really?
right. I mean, I think what I do, I mean, and what we had been touching on there was the fact of this sort of physical maps, even though they're not physical in the sense that you take them out of your pocket like a Far Cry 2. They're physical in the sense that they're pieces of paper in your inventory that you can look at. They're on their own tab, the images tab. There's other stuff there too, but occasionally they'll throw you a map which can be fairly detailed. In the catacombs, it's fairly detailed. I mean, it looks like a top-down DM map or something like that. And then in the shipyard, it's that way as well, or for the boat itself, the ship itself, not for the shipyard, which I could have used. It's more just the different decks, and it's not always 100% clear how they connect, but it's pretty clear, I guess. But then on the bottom floor, where you actually have to place the charges to blow some triple welds so that you can I don't know, wave your hands and have some water go in the boat. That actually was probably my favorite use of those maps, because I was having a hard time orienting myself towards, wait a minute, I found this one, so there should be one over here. I can't, where is it? And it was hidden behind some walls and it was hard to get to. And so there was just this nice interplay where I could feel the level designer being like, aha, I saw you. I see you there, player. You think you know exactly where it is, but you can't see it. You don't know what to do. So you got to find some other way. And those are the moments where I felt sort of a dialogue with the designer of that level, in a good way. Parts of that level I'm not fond of, but I did like those parts once I got on the ship. So.
Well, you feel like we talked about, I think, last episode, probably intentional, but it sort of reinforces the fantasy fulfillment that we talked about when it comes to being this uber special agent who is given, intelligence from various sources, including these images, and then you have objectives, and then you kind of have to sleuth your way through the rest of it. So it's not like a real literal map, like a Metroid or something, but in some cases they're pretty detailed, but in some other cases they're not. It's just suggestive, and like the cathedral later that you'll get to in a bit, and largely helpful, but your objective isn't marked as much as it was in the ship level, and so you kind of get this sense of like, okay, I got to figure this out because this is the intel I was given from the mission, from the people in the mission, and so it kind of feels special agenty, which I think is also cool. Maybe intentional, maybe just limitations of the time. And then the funny thing about maps, I feel like we've probably talked about this in various series, but when you have a map, whether it is a static, sort of image-based map like this one, or Ultima Underworld, or Metroid, or whatever, it does change your level design as a level designer, because it exists, and so it kind of impacts the way, at least it did for me, and others that I've talked to, it impacts the way that you think about what the player's information set really is, and okay, I have this image, and okay, what the image is that they have, and sometimes it's cart before the horse. Maybe you have the map comes up later in development, so you didn't know what the map looked like. So it's not not a perfect example, but when it's out there for the player, then sometimes you lean on it too much, or you make excuses for bad navigation or landmarking or flow or something. Because, they have the map, they can lean on that, as a crutch. So,
and that's a thing that I feel like there was a chance for people to lean into. I mean, certainly the Elder Scrolls games have there's a magic school or whatever that uses divination effectively to tell you where you need to go for your quest, which effectively means doing pathfinding through the whole world where they might go to. So there's that. And then the other one I was thinking of was Perfect Dark. Was it called Zero? Perfect Dark. Perfect. The new one, the one that was on the Xbox 360 at the beginning of the life cycle. That had just arrows on the ground, tell you where you need to go at any time.
Dead Space as well.
And certainly others. I feel like Fable had that. little things on the ground, sort of breadcrumbs to lead you wherever you need to go. A number of games have done it, and I think it is a crutch that you can lean on, because now you know where your goal is and you don't really care. I mean, I think it's a good option though for players who don't care about the spatial navigation, and spatial navigation is not a strength of every person, right? So
yeah, it's a double-edged sword for me, because when I when I mention the example of it being a crutch, there's times when I think it's used to the detriment of the game, and I think it also depends on the goals of the game. Like something like Dead Space, which is one that comes to mind when it comes to the sort of, I think it was like down on the D-pad or something, where you got that navigation on the floor and it kind of just told you where you needed to go. The emphasis of that game really wasn't like macro world navigation. There was maybe some micro and maybe some sort of pseudo puzzles, but it was really just, it was a horror game. So, they didn't really care about you figuring that stuff out. But in this game, in Deus Ex, I feel like they are intentionally giving you a set of objectives and then having you, especially because like we've talked about the emergent gameplay and emergent level design and having multiple options and ways to do something, they're going to not hold your hand because they want you to figure it out and discover unexpected things, and there's a section that we'll talk about next episode that once you free the hostages that I want to talk about in that regard of the level design and options in that area. And actually I want to talk about some Hong Kong stuff too, and we can talk about it there too. But yeah, it just kind of comes back to what you're trying to do. And I think it was appropriate in Dead Space because the emphasis was on other aspects of the experiences.
Right. Some of the twitch aspects and
the combat,
the horror,
tension. It's like the game's already tense enough. We don't want you to have to get lost, so to speak.
Yeah, you almost wish that they had the opportunity occasionally to make it fizzle out, like it was a resource or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
maybe somebody does that at some point, that you can't navigate now. I don't remember that happening.
There's got to be, that's a good idea. There's got to be somebody who's done that. It's not exactly the same, but I think we had this conversation when we played Resident Evil when it comes to
the typewriters. Right.
Yeah, making something critical.
Yeah,
still
and something you lean on, right? And you expect to have, and then suddenly it's gone. And I mean, lots of games do that with the sort of power fantasy stuff. Oh, you lost your weapons. I mean, that happened in Dark Forces, which we just talked about. But to turn around and take away a mechanic that you've been leaning on, at a crucial time,
it's tricky.
Yeah, can be. Yes, it's that's the sort of thing that some players just throw their hands up and say, forget it.
And I think we always think it's a good idea because we want to mix it up and be surprising or something. But I just wonder if there's more mature designs, out there that have dealt with that kind of surprise factor differently and better than just that trope. Ironically, they do it in this game too. So
yeah. Sure. Right, of course, when you're in the prison. That's right.
Yeah.
Think of that. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they kind of reset you there, and so it's like, oh, now I have to find each little thing again or whatever, for at least for a short time.
Speaking of needing a crutch, let's talk about the damage model.
Oh man, good one.
Thank you. I was just hoping you would say crutch. You like to say crutch. I knew that I was going to have a chance someday to use that. But the reason why that comes to mind is because whenever I fall any decent height, I bust up my legs pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the place where the damage model is most obvious. But there's a lot of things going on with this damage model. It's not the first to have positional damage. But there's a lot going on here. So let's dig in.
Yeah, well, I had an interesting thing happen to me in the cathedral area where I was playing in my the style that I'm playing, which is run and gun basically, and kind of carefree and a lot of reloading. And I had some snipers that are up, spoiler, in the towers around there, and so I was kind of running up behind them up the stairs and getting up close to them because I'll tell you later about my new tactic. and they're point blank shooting me with sniper rifles, and I'm going down in one hit.
Right.
And
their one hit kills those things. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when I get shot at a distance, they don't seem to always be. So it's some interesting stuff going on there with maybe the way the collision model's working with the pills or something. I don't know, because it's just inconsistent enough for me where I'm kind of frustrated sometimes because I don't understand the rules, because I'll watch my little indicator of what part of my body has been hit. And sometimes it's pretty consistent. Like I feel like I mentioned before, I think the automated turrets tend to hit you in the head pretty consistently, probably because their accuracy is just so lethal and they aim for that. And then like shotgun stuff typically
also they're mounted on the ceiling, so they're shooting down at an angle at your body. So
yeah, that's true.
Whatever's higher.
Good point. Yeah. So I feel like I don't know. I mean, you'd have to obviously cover the tech side of it when it comes to ray tracing, or however they're calculating whether something's going to hit or not. But I feel like my impression, which could be wrong, is that they are pretty accurately representing where a bullet trajectory is going and what body part it is hitting. But the challenge with that, I don't know if it's a problem, but the challenge with that, in my opinion, is from the player's perspective, you don't necessarily need to simulate that exactly. You want them to feel the way you want them to feel and fudge it, and give them rule sets. But if you're just modeling it based on a spread that a random machine gun has, the player has no expectation about what's going to happen. And so they don't really know how to react or what to do other than to take cover. But, you know what I mean? It's like, it's great that it seems simulated pretty accurately, but because the gunplay is the way it is, I really can't predict what's going to happen very often when it comes to, and because I'm playing, a lot of this is because of the way I'm playing, because I'm pretty exposed a lot of the time, because I'm literally running in circles and jumping and hiding behind, it's like I'm playing like a shooter, and it doesn't really stand up for that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I think what they're probably doing is representing characters as cylinders, maybe cylinder with a sphere to separate the head, and then just doing a ray trace versus cylinder or sphere intersection is super simple. It's about the best you've got, and from that you can get position and orientation pretty quickly. And so I'd have to guess it's something like that, with just a really wide area for the torso and just tiny little cones on the sides that represent the arms, and then maybe the legs are just below this height on the cylinder. And then when the cylinder shrinks because you've crouched, they just shrink the thing down, and everything's a different percentage. If I were implementing it naively at that time, that's what I would have done.
I mean, that was pretty standard. Wasn't that pretty standard Unreal stuff anyway, right?
I think so.
Kind of came with it.
Right. Yeah, maybe. Certainly you would have been modeling the characters as cylinders, or later on capsules, which are just cylinders with kind of rounded heads. So yeah, definitely a possibility there. I do agree that the lack of control over where the weapons are going to go. I mean, so we're playing a little bit differently, so it changes, because I take a long time to aim because nobody can see me, and then at the last moment I shoot my tranquilizer dart, and then I go hide somewhere else because now they're running around looking for me, as we talked about on a prior episode, that they know exactly where it came from. So my shots tend to actually hit pretty accurately. Not always. But if you're running around, that field is opening. So I think a stationary, and I believe that they're basically doing the same thing for everyone. I think the model for everything is pretty much the same. Yeah. So whenever you're moving, the spread is just widening. It's probably not. They're probably not going super crazy with like how much they're bringing in and things like that. But when people stop and they're right next to you, they don't miss ever.
And they'll crouch sometimes too, and maybe that impacts their accuracy potentially, because it does for you, I believe, too.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying the sort of spread experience and and hit indication experience is the same for the player as it is for them, you think?
That would be my impression.
Yeah.
It's a sort of game that feels like they want everything to live by the same rules.
Yeah, and that's fair. I appreciate that definitely from a design aesthetic reason, or rather systemic reason. But it's just, do you know what I mean as far as like the feedback loop there?
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
As a player
it's
who
super
is
frustrating to not know whether basically what's going to kill me, or
yeah,
it's hard to make decisions.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard for me tactically, because I bet you don't actually get hit that often, right? Because you're generally avoiding conflict.
Right, correct.
So you're not seeing these false positives that I'm seeing. As an example, in that cathedral section where there were like 4 snipers there, kind of, I'm just trying to basically run up and backstab. When they were one-shotting me with their sniper rifles, basically point blank range, which I kind of understand. But working on Halo, it's not. It's not. Right. It breaks my brain a little bit because that's a skill shot to do that. But anyway, so so then I would reload and try again, and sometimes I would crouch, and sometimes I would stand up, and sometimes they would miss or whatever. But it just I didn't feel like I was getting enough feedback on what was going to be advantageous. And maybe it was just, sniper rifle, so it's like, of course it's going to hit me and there's really no options, but I just couldn't really react the way. And it kind of comes to the point that we'll talk about next time, when we talk about the hostage section, and that's just the jack of all trades, master of none kind of point that I want to make. So put a pin in that. But yeah, it's interesting. And then the funny thing is, when, to your point about jumping and falling down and having your legs get damaged, the interesting thing about it is I do appreciate when that happens, because I feel like the system then is working from a rule set that I do understand, because I've just fallen or jumped too far down. Right. And now my legs either don't work or are heavily damaged. And I think that's cool, because it's like, oh, of course that's what happened. I may be a cyborg or whatever I am, but I'm not indestructible. And so I have to think about that stuff. And the cause and effect is very clear. It's just, I think the gunplay is where I'm really talking about right now.
Yeah, so I get that. I think one of the things that may be going, I mean, there's 2 things going on. One is you're not using the sniper rifle. So you,
well, I do use it sometimes, but yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay. So I don't know if you're seeing the rules, or maybe the rules are not apparent to you, because when you use it, you're not using it against things who could take a hit from a sniper rifle at distance, but not up close, and things like this. So you maybe haven't sussed out the whole possibility space for sniper rifles for yourself.
Sure. I haven't tried point blank killing anyone with a sniper rifle, for sure. And when I shoot from afar, I make sure that I hit the head, so.
Right. So there's that. And then the other part is I do think there's probably part of the damage model is how far does the bullet travel, and maybe it does less damage the further it goes. And so maybe you're able to absorb those hits when you're further away. And when you get up close,
that's a good point.
Oh, you're just getting maximum damage. You're getting the biggest possible number that it does up to 100 feet away or whatever. So those are things that I think about, because that's another thing that's pretty common, is to be able to get the distance along array at which an intersection happens. So you actually can always get that sort of how far. That's a thing that's kind of always available to you. So you. That just kind of falls out of the collision information. So you have that, so you might as well use it, right? And so maybe that's what's going on as well. But just theories. Obviously, there's no way to know without inspecting the code or the
yeah. Well, I mean, as a counterexample, when I am fighting somebody with a machine gun, another, I guess maybe it's an even better point than the sniper rifle example, or a better way to describe my point. I am obviously kind of doing the run and gun dance with this other person, and I probably have a machine gun as well, and we're shooting each other, and because of the firing model being spread based for the most part, especially with the or at least the way that they're getting some of their accuracy is from spread variables of random number generation or whatever it is. It's inconsistent. And so I'm running around, and sometimes I'll fight the same person, and then reload and fight them again. And one of those times, just based on the way that, It's just how machine guns sometimes work. You get hit some places and not others, and sometimes it's more lethal than others. And I think the funny thing about the fact that they show you the damage model and where you're getting hit because you see every body part, maybe that's exposed more than it ever is usually in games. And so it's more obvious to me of like, oh, this fight, he hit me all in the torso. And of course I died. This other fight, he hit me in my right leg and my right arm, so
because it's literally a random model where they're checking each one rather than a statistical model where I'm going to do some number of bullets and 90% of them are going to hit in this little circle.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, I can see that.
It's the intention.
It's purely the RNG, right? Going back to XCOM, right? It could go your way or not.
Yep, exactly. It's XCOM.
I see what you're saying as far as that goes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is, I like that they expose that information overall, but there's times when it gets them into trouble because it shows the player too much about how you're getting hit, and then it kind of, it breaks the rule set that you have in your head about what should be happening because you literally see, actually that was just the RNG.
Yeah, somehow some of that all hit me in the arm. Boy, I got lucky, right? I wasn't able to use my arm, but
it's a double-edged sword. But yeah, you're right on you put it better as far as the literal simulation of it, which makes sense to design it that way. But then there's also the statistical side of it, which I think what we've maybe gotten better at with shooters especially is, again, going back to my original point of what's the intention that you want the player to get from the moment-to-moment mechanical loop of that combat versus what literally would be happening. It's creating an experience. It doesn't need to be simulated literally for the player to get
and almost no weapon would have a spread like those machine guns. Right?
Hey, that's a
shotgun thing. So there's that too. Right, which is a balance thing, and they want the bullets to be more lethal, I guess, and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of variables at play. The other area that I feel like we've gotten better with randomness and player expectations is, so Sid Meier's talked about this with the Civilization. You can probably track down that GDC talk. It's probably from 5 years or so ago now. He talks about what players expect from the numbers. Oh, it's three of mine against 2 of yours. I should always win. Or the other one was randomness in World of Warcraft drops, where progressively...
you've used this example before.
Right, progressively as they... as you don't get the drop, they make the chance of getting a drop higher. So that at a certain point, you're basically guaranteed that you're going to get it, even though a pure RNG might mean you never get a thing, right? So in increasing the percentage likelihood, and then once you get one, you can drop it back down again and things like that. So
yeah, that's good. That's good design, I think.
Right, exactly, because it maintains that sort of player expectation that when
perception is everything.
I shoot this weapon at somebody's torso, I expect most of the bullets out of this machine gun with a stock and a barrel it's not a blunderbuss, for crying out loud. So it's not often you get to say the word blunderbuss. So I'm glad
you've worked it well into that. That was nice work.
Thank you.
Didn't see that coming. No blunderbusses in this game.
There might be. Maybe we just haven't found it yet. There is a pretty good shotgun. It probably fires more or less like a blunderbuss. They throw individual pellets out into the world. Let's also talk about the augmentations and skills, and then I think we'll probably get into some specific stories before we close out.
Yeah. That's a good segue. Yeah.
Because one of the things that's happened with me is I've done my binary choice of augmentations, and I haven't found the head or the eyes yet.
I haven't found the eyes or the second leg, or second torso or something. I have the head though. Okay. I think.
Yeah, so I've missed one. You've maybe missed one. So you have those augmentations. There's the possibility of powering them up. Mm-hmm. And that is a thing. I'm carrying around 4 upgrade canisters, I think they're called. I basically, I feel like I've picked all the wrong things. I end up being like, oh, I wish I could up my ballistic. I can't update my ballistic because I picked the other one, the EMP thing. Because my thought was I'm going to be stealthy, so therefore nobody will be hitting me anyway. And I'm more worried about the electrical situations and things like that. As it turns out, I'm sometimes just running through a scene to try to get to someplace and hide on the other side and taking a bunch of damage on the way. So there's been, which is partly time pressure just from the way we're playing for the podcast and how little time I can actually play because of my ongoing injury. But it's also, there's also that thing where you pick a binary decision before you know how much it's going to matter.
Right. And we've talked about this before. We must have, right?
Right. Absolutely. That's not a new
Torment
topic.
Or something. Yeah.
Sure.
Fallout.
You're right. Character creation often is a whole thing just in any RPG. Here you're kind of doing your character creation as you go. But even so, often when you make those choices, you haven't been exposed to the things that you're most likely to make the decisions based on. You haven't met those spider electrical bots that I was glad to have the EMP dampening or whatever for, the electrical dampening for.
Oh yeah, those suckers. Oof.
Yeah, they're a pain in the neck. And I basically just run past them though. So I don't end up engaging them in any way. So the shielding's nice and I often turn it on, but sometimes I don't even remember until I'm past them. Oh yeah, I could have turned on that ability. But the upgrades are the thing where I don't think I've used any. Maybe one, but maybe not even one.
Are you intentionally not? Or why aren't you using them?
I haven't felt the need. And I find like I don't often. I may have used...
It's all statistical.
A long time on the bionic arm or whatever, so I could lift the heavier boxes. But even that, I think that's the base. Like just choosing that, you're able to lift one thing that's heavier or one degree heavier. I might have picked up something very heavy in the airplane or something. So maybe I did one there, but that would be the only time. It's just been a while, and so I've forgotten. So it's things like that I just, it's not.
Yeah. I mean, they're not super clear about what the upgrades will do. I mean, it seems if you read the descriptions, it seems generally statistical in nature in that it just, the numbers go up. There's not like, I don't think behavior changes. It seems like, at least in the way the descriptions, I mean, I've used all of mine that I've found, but kind of just, so I am executing on the plan that I mentioned, I think last episode. I have fully upgraded all 4 slots into that energy recycler.
The passive or the thing where it makes everything cheaper.
Yeah, it's active, but then it's the weird one where you turn it on when you're using other augs, and it makes, I guess it makes them drain more slowly.
Right.
And so I think I might be onto something in that what I do now is I just turn that on because I basically have maxed out energy, whatever the resource is for your energy, your
bioelectric.
Bioelectric. Yeah. And so I have the full, as much as you can carry of that at any given time. And what I do is I turn on that recycling augmentation, and then I turn on the healing augmentation. And basically it's not free, but it is pretty damn good healing now that I don't need health packs. I don't, I just need bioenergy, and it goes down slowly because I've maxed that out all the way to 4, the recycler. And then if I keep updating my health, I assume I'll just keep getting more health with each pip because it kind of, it's a heal over time thing.
Right.
So I don't think it's an exploit, but I think I'm definitely, using it.
You're leaning into the power of fantasy.
Liberally. Yeah. Yeah. And other than that, I haven't been using my augs very much, to be honest.
The one I think I'm going to upgrade is, I was waiting to see if I found the head or the eyes and see if one of those I really wanted to have. But I think the one I'm actually going to upgrade is the stealthy feet so that I can run quietly.
Oh yeah, would be good. Yeah,
That's probably the thing I most want, is to be able to move quietly, completely silently while I'm running around, so that I can get by guys faster.
yeah, that's a good one for you. I took the jump instead of the stealth.
Right.
I think your choice there is fast. Is higher jumps and less damage when you fall. Maybe.
Yes.
Though I sure haven't felt that to be the case. uh,
Yeah, but you're probably
although
jumping off of tall buildings, knowing you.
Some of it,
I'll just jump down. It'll be fine.
Well, some of it is that, and to be honest, some of it is I forget to use the aug. I just haven't.
Right.
I think some of it. I think some of it is my running.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it's my running gun nature, how I'm playing, but I just managing the F keys, the function keys on the fly like that. I don't know. I just am not planning probably as much as you are from each situation. My planning tends to be just reloading after I die, and hitting my head against the wall a different way. Right. And then it's very, very disconcerting way to play this game. I have to say, it's really, it's throwing me for a loop. It's a little bit like my System Shock 2, which just was going against every part of my being to play that way. Right. And it ended up paying off in that game, but it was a rough road to get there. And this is kind of similar. This game is not a shooter. It's not good.
Right.
It's not meant to be
this. It's not. Yes, I think it is. It's meant to. I think it's meant to make you, in a way, like Thief does, to empower you when you do it the in, out, nobody sees me, nobody gets hurt. That's what you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
By, even if that is a slow and grinding way to play a game, because it feels that way to me. Often there's been a couple levels here where I've been like, not my favorite.
Yeah.
I played it stealthy last time, and I just, I do remember some of them, in particular the shipyard, not the boat itself, but the shipyard, just remembering when I walked into it, like, oh no, I remember this. There's all those robots everywhere, and man.
Oh yeah. Once they escalate up the enemy the enemy toughness to the robots and the super soldiers or whatever those things are, like both of our options will go down quite a bit. I think the difficulty ramp up is not quite there either, but I mean, to your point, like I do think they encourage that. The thing, so I think my very first playthrough was how you're playing, because that's generally how I play these games if I have a choice, whether it be Dishonored or something. And obviously the games have leaned into encouraging that even more so. However, I feel like my second game, it wasn't what's your term, knucklehead stealth. Yeah. Just still the best thing ever. I didn't play full, like, it wasn't the full stealth of the first game, the first run through, but it was sort of like a carefree stealth run. Mm. And what I mean by that is, like, I didn't sweat it if I triggered something. And I feel like this game in particular, and some of the ones that really were emulating it afterwards, shine when you're using kind of a little of everything and you're not kind of focusing on one particular way, because they didn't polish the mechanical side of things enough to make any one way to do things exclusively shine, I don't think. But if you're very like flexible and nimble, and you'll run and gun a little bit, and then you'll go and hide, and then you'll do a little stealth, and then it's a little bit. And I kind of consider the Bethesda games a little bit like this too, where if you look at any one particular thing, it doesn't really live up, but it's the sole sum of parts thing, I don't know. That was my memory of my second playthrough, where it was just kind of like, I'm just going to do whatever. It feels right.
Definitely, I've kind of moved to that point now because of time. I cannot.
Yeah.
It just takes.
I just think
forever to get through these levels, but also,
I think it might be more fun.
Yeah, it is more fun. It's also, but what happens often is, somebody sees me. I run to a place I know where eventually they'll get tired of looking for me, and instead of having to reload, I've had that frisson of, I'm caught. And sometimes I push my luck. Like, I'm running to a place where I don't actually know what's going to be on the other side. And sometimes I get lucky and I run around a corner and I can find a place to hide pretty quickly, and they lose track of me. You start to learn the rules too, of where they're likely not to find you. And so there's sort of a lot going on with that as well. I had one area, I was on the ship, and I was behind some boxes, and if you go too far behind the boxes, they see you through like the crack, so you have to just like go in just the right amount. And they came up and they stood right next to me. I could see them right there next to me. I'm just standing there. They're like, and then they're like, no, I guess he's gone. Thought I saw something, whatever they say. And they wandered away. Incidentally, for Chinese, they don't sound terribly Chinese on that Chinese freighter. That's a side issue.
Oh man, yeah, with the VO, this game overall.
Yeah,
other than JC and a couple of the main characters, yeah.
Yes, it's just not really consistent about what it wants to do. I'm totally fine with everybody sounds whatever American, but
some of the
but they're not
accents and stuff are tone deaf. Yeah.
They're all over the place. I don't want to dump on that because that was very common at the time.
Yep.
There's probably a fair number of voices here that are team members as well. So I really don't want to dump on that because that's just
French accents are hard. I understand.
That's oui, sir.
You're French. You would know.
I would know. I'm of French descent. That's
okay.
Not quite the same. But
thanks for clarity.
Well done beating Croatia. So
there you go.
There you go.
Nice, relevant, nice, good reference for something. Yeah,
that's very just
don't watch.
But I'm aware.
Okay.
Anyway, I was also going to say about the skills. So,
yeah.
I got to this radiation room on my way into Paris, and there's this room you have to cross. At least I was unable to find any way not to go across it. And
I couldn't either.
There's a ton of boxes that are just marked radioactive or whatever in there, and it's just a total hotspot as far as radiation goes. What I discovered after dying very quickly, many times going in there, despite wearing a hazmat suit, is that I hadn't even taken the first level of environmental skill. So the hazmat suit was doing me no good.
Oh, maybe that same thing happened to me then. I didn't think I took any. I don't remember physically taking any skill pips in or devoting any points to that one. But I just turned my health on and ran through.
Right. So you probably got through it.
I just brute forced it.
But that was one place where I considered upping my augs because I think.
Yeah, there is one that you can do that on.
One of them I think
I took
does that. It's that one is or something like that.
Well, it's swimming or hazmat, so you don't get both. I took swimming, so I couldn't.
Oh, I took hazmat for sure.
Okay,
because there was a place later on where I tried to swim and I ran out. I ran out of air, which was great. I was like, oh, I guess I didn't take that. Yeah, so it took me a long time to figure that out, that's what was going on there. And then I put a bunch of skill points into it, so I was basically maxed out on hazmats because I was at that point pretty low on health generally. I had just come from, this was kind of unfortunate, an unfortunate side effect of their tech. I had just come from Stanton Dowd. And he, so you go to his compound, Jock drops you off in the parking lot outside, and then when he picks you up, he actually picks you up on the grounds. Well, I managed to get through all of that without alerting anyone. Blew up whatever.
Wow. I have a story to tell about that too.
I went through the graveyard. You go down and find Dowd, and there's a switch you can turn, and you can go down even lower into the cemetery. You can pop out, and I ran basically back around to the parking lot and hid until everybody got tired of me. And then I went and I got into the gatehouse and I blew up the transmitter. Now Jock parks on the lawn in the middle of a bunch of dudes.
Yeah,
so I just ran out and activated him.
Yeah,
and took no damage. And then after we had our conversation, I heard my character die.
Yeah, same thing happened to me. Yeah,
but I actually ended up in Paris with just very low health. So I don't know what happened there.
Maybe that same thing happened to me. I didn't notice. I didn't hear myself die, but I heard them say the voice lines they say when you die.
Oh, interesting.
Like, well, let's
We
write
got
this one
him.
up.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. What are you doing on Friday? Yeah.
Yeah, they have the paperwork. Like, well, let's write the paperwork up on this one,
Right.
or
Right.
something like that.
Right.
Yeah. I forgot to mention my new strategy, which is ironic because of my run and gun nature up to this point. Well, actually, I started this after Hong Kong because I got the sword. Basically, I'm just using the sword.
Oh, nice.
The lightsaber sword, and it is pretty lethal, but it means I have to run up to everybody.
Right.
And so, like in a situation like that, I'm basically running like a wild man through the cemetery.
This explains why you're having trouble with the snipers.
Exactly. Up to people, and for humans, the regular humans, it's just one hit kill.
Oh,
and
nice.
then for the super soldiers, it's only 2 from the front, 1 from the back. If I get them in the back.
Oh, nice.
Obviously, does nothing for robots, so I just have to kind of stealth around for that. But yeah, so that's my new. Basically, it's ammo free, so that's kind of one reason I'm doing it, and it's just so lethal. So I'm starting to focus on that a little bit.
But you don't. Ammo doesn't take up any inventory space or anything like that.
No, but I just run out of it because I'm shooting. I'm shooting so much.
Right. You've got all this spread because you're moving around.
Yeah, and it's like all the guns take up so much inventory space.
They
the
do.
guns themselves.
That's true.
So I have to make weird decisions there, and I don't know. I'm all over the map.
There's a part where I wanted to move a body because he was in the blast zone on the ship. I didn't want him to die when I blew up the lamb.
That's so nice.
So I was moving him, but you have to take out the weapon. I had no space. You can't pick him up until you've looted his body. So I had to move somewhere, drop a bunch of stuff. Take his gun, move and drop his gun, and then pick him up, and then go put him somewhere else, and then go pick up all my stuff again. So things like that happen, which are not intended, but they're still kind of amusing.
So it's funny with the there's sort of a similar story with the Hong Kong story I wanted to tell as with the gatehouse in the cemetery. I want to talk about audio design really quickly. Can I move to that really quick,
absolutely.
Or do you want to finish up some skill stuff?
No, go ahead.
Well, it relates to what we were just talking about in that. So what's the name of that tower? The Empress Tower. You wrote it down. The one in Hong Kong where Maggie.
The
Queen's Tower. Yeah. So it's like a fancy apartment complex or apartment high rise or something. Anyway, that's where Maggie Chow is. And so when you go and visit her, and at least the way that I did it, I got into one of the elevators and I went up. And as you're going up the elevators, they do some interesting thing with probably intentional level design combined with audio design, in that as you're going up the elevator, on a floor that it does not stop on, you can hear some beeps and boops from computers.
Yep.
And then occasionally you'll even hear one of the guards say something. And so like, oh, that's interesting. And of course, there's no way to stop there. But it gives you this clue that there are floors that you can probably go to that are inaccessible by you right now. And it sort of forces you to explore and see what is going on. Because there's basically... The cool thing about that building is there's a much more than meets the eye, right? And there's these other levels and these closed off floors and stuff, and then ends up being this whole sort of interesting back room and sort of in between the walls kind of mentality. Once you find that sort of secret floor that leads you to be able to get into her, I think that's where you find out information about the sword. There's something that you get when you find that secret area, but I wouldn't have
basically
ever
find
looked.
out that she's been holding back information from the gangs that would allow them to no longer war. Basically,
yeah, she's orchestrating the whole thing. Yeah,
she's been orchestrating.
But there's like guards back there and trip mines and security, and it's like this whole sub area. It's kind of like it might even connect to VersaLife. I forget. But anyway, my point being is just there was this great moment of discovery where when you hear that as you're going up the elevator, you're like, wait a second,
right?
What is that? And then I kind of explore on the outside, and I think you find a window, or you go up the other elevator, and it just is interesting things, these interesting little great level design and audio design tricks that just give you enough of a clue to pique your interest on kind of, explorations. And then what that ends up doing is it helps you reveal her true intentions, like you said,
right?
Because of this one little moment going up an elevator where you're like, wait a second, that is a computer sound,
right?
That is in this random place.
Or it's a Majestic 12 guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or it's a guard. Why is a guard right there? Well, right. That's that doesn't make any sense. I thought that she was on on the good side.
So did you end up going through her ceiling?
Yeah,
I did the same thing.
Yeah. It's hilarious. It's
break the glass either with a gun or whatever, and they're running around down there, and occasionally I'll poke my head out and I'll shoot them with a dart. And they'll.
Oh, wait a second. Wait, maybe I didn't. So you're talking about I went through a secret door behind a. Now that you mentioned that, I remember getting to the roof later, and so that's what I think I was thinking of. But when I got into her. I went through behind a bookshelf or something that opened. And
interesting.
Just kind of
I
went into her main room eventually.
Right.
After I'd found
I shot
evidence.
Through the roof.
And
it brought in some of the guards, and I had to deal with them sort of one by one as they'd run out into position. And I had gone and found where they were, so some of them I was able to get to before that, so that I didn't have as many to deal with. So I could use like the prod on some of them instead of the dart, which is dangerous because they can get a lot of shots off at you while you're lining it up. So yeah, I had a number of when they broke the glass and the klaxon started going, I was like, uh-oh. I wasn't expecting that to happen, which is great. I mean, that's
that's cool.
It's
just
thing. So
the reason I wanted to bring that audio cue up, however intentional it was, what we often do to more curate, I guess, what we want people to hear when is kind of guide the I'm losing the term for it, the audio term for it. Basically, how the sound, the simulation, though it's all fake, of when you can hear sounds when,
right,
based on
the
what
propagation
room you're in. Yeah, the sound propagation, there's another word for it, but anyway, I've lost it. And so we will control that maybe through scripts or through the audio engine or something, so you hear things logically. And in this case, it's probably just a sphere, right, as far as like a radius of where the sound can be heard. Mm-hmm. And rather than making sure that the player can't hear that sound because it could be confusing or it doesn't make complete sense or whatever, because you can hear it through a wall or through an elevator or something.
Attenuation, but
it'll come to me later. But in this case, actually, probably intentional. It was actually a good thing, because even though you could hear this through the wall and you can hear this guy talking through the wall, which typically in some games we would say that's a bug. It actually helps the player with some audio language that piques your interest, which I thought was interesting. And the same thing happened. The same thing happened at the gatehouse, because there's that thing that you have to blow up that that's behind that shelf. And when, do you know what I'm talking about in the cemetery?
Mm-hmm.
There's the EMP thing or whatever that you have to go take out. When you go to the gatekeeper the first time, you can hear that thing inside that room. And so at that point, and I kick myself for not trying it, you could probably smash that, that shelf right away and find the thing that ends up being the objective at the end. And I don't know what would have happened if you would destroy it there. And then what I did find out is when you go downstairs, you remember Dowd says, "Hey, how'd you get in?" And you say, "Oh, the gatekeeper let me in." And he's like, "What gatekeeper?" Do you remember that?
Yes.
And he says, "Well, that's weird." And so I went back, reloaded. I went back and killed the gatekeeper when I met him. And then you go down there, and he says, "How'd you get in?" "Oh, the gatekeeper let me in." And then JC says, "Well, I took him out." And nice. And Dowd says, "That's probably a good idea. You shouldn't trust anybody right now."
That is terrific.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
That's really good. Okay, the other word, occlusion.
Occlusion, that's it. Thank you. Yeah. Like we were just talking about it at work like yesterday, and
Right.
I couldn't remember it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, occlusion is what I'm talking about. We would model the occlusion so it's accurate.
Right.
But in this case, it's actually a game design sort of trick that in my opinion, works to the advantage of the game.
Right, and I think it totally can. I mean, like you said, it's almost certainly just a sphere check. Does the player pass through this sphere? Mm-hmm. He triggers this thing, he hears this thing, regardless of whether it makes any real sense that you would be able to hear it. I think is absolutely. There have been a couple times where that has happened, running around the outside of the gang hideout. I think I triggered one. And there was one somewhere else. I can remember it happening. And those weren't meant to be, but it was fine. I don't want to go too much more into the scripting conversation because, there was one thing that I felt like was scripted, but worked against me constantly. So I guess I'll finish with this. In the catacombs, when you go and you meet the rebels, Silhouette, I think it's great they have a code name. So you go meet the French rebels, and when you find them, it's basically by finding a block you can push on the wall that opens the door. I had snuck by the Majestic 12 Commando who was outside that. Those are the guys who have their arms up all the time that shoot really rough on you. And I had snuck by him, found the thing, opened the door, went in, closed the door, and some Silhouette member came running up to me, and we had a little conversation. After we finished the conversation, he went and opened the door. I'm like, what? And I closed the door again. And then this other one comes and runs up and opens the door again. And then the commando comes in through the door and starts blasting at us. And so I had to reload. And I did it again. And I kept jamming on that button. Like I stood there and waited. So it was just a weird thing. Like, they want this scene to happen so badly. And it was a weird thing because I didn't understand, like, what is the goal there? I don't care enough about these people that it matters to me that they, it was just a weird, weird thing to do there.
They also keep saying, I hope they don't find us.
Exactly.
I hope they don't find us.
I hope they don't find us. Well, stop opening the freaking door, man.
It's funny. That's like probably a clash of scripting and AI, right?
Could well be. I mean, maybe they had found a path to the enemy and were going to encounter it or something like that, or vice versa. The enemy knew that they were there now because I opened the door. I mean, who knows? But yes, it was definitely a weird moment. It's also possibly just one of those bugs that you go, I don't know, ship it. You don't have to.
Yeah, totally.
Those are
and this is such a sandbox game.
Just hard to test all those things.
They probably just were okay with some of that. Those shenanigans happening, and it's like, well, it just comes with the territory of the craziness of this. I feel like that's sort of, again, some of the Bethesda stuff too. It's like,
oh yes,
it's a crazy sandbox. Yep. I know you know better than most. So,
all right. Well, let's put a pin in it there. Honestly, this time for sure, and we will finish it for next time. And I make you that promise. I believe I can get through the rest of it now. By next week.
You'll be fine. You're almost caught up to me. So
no, it's just been. I just can't play for extended periods, so it makes it a little tricky. But now we have a bit of feedback. We each have a bit of feedback to read, one from each of the channels we pull from. The first of those is the Apple Podcast reviews. Those are a great way for us to reach new listeners. And since we don't take your cash, we'd love to have your credit. So go ahead and credit us with a review.
Wow. How long have you been sitting on that one?
Forever. That goes way back to my Spider-Man 2 helping up Jamie Fristrom days. Yeah, I'll tell you some other time. Someday I'll tell that story. But you have the first one. We have a podcast review.
Okay. The subject is finally a gaming podcast focused on game analysis from Grenton. Grenton?
Good
I'm going to go with that. Grenton. The two devs take one game and play it all the way through and rather than retelling the story, they analyze their experience from a gameplay angle. One of my endless frustrations when trying to find an in-depth gaming podcast is often the two hosts will spend an enormous amount of time just retelling the story. And I appreciate so much that Brett and Tim often gloss over the story and instead talk about the interesting mechanics at play. It's really valuable to me. The hosts have a great yin-yang relationship. Brett's reserved emotion its deadpan personality helps balance all of the joy and excitement Tim expresses.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know why this is so funny. Joking aside, I love the little things about this podcast, from Brett's intros, Tim pointing out subtle mechanics, to the freaking show notes. Call out to Brett on that. Yeah, Brett's show notes are amazing. They're all Brett, by the way. A true gem. And if I were to suggest an episode to start with, it would be Planescape Torment episode 58, in which they go in depth about game mechanics and narrative that no other podcast I've listened to has matched. Thank you, Zimmy Finger. Gretchen is also not my real name. Zimmy Finger is an awesome name as well. I can't tell. This guy's a crack up or gal.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great one. That's one of the best.
That's pretty great.
Reviews. I'm glad I didn't read ahead, actually, so I could experience it on the fly
in real time. That was pretty.
To quote Zimmy Finger, a true gem.
It's fun. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, we do tend to gloss over the story, and it's funny because often we talk about in pre-show how we should make sure we cover a little bit more of the story this time, and then we get into discussions about mechanical issues in it, and often we just don't get back around to it. So it's
so funny that he sees it as a strength, that we always try to remember, and I appreciate that, because it is fun to talk about the mechanics and stuff and get into it.
Yeah.
And I to be honest, I kind of agree with him, because I listen to a lot of gaming podcasts, and I also want people to talk a lot more about the gameplay, because it's something that I'm interested in. But,
right.
Yeah.
And that's our focus. I have the other one, and I was going to hold this another week, but I would feel too bad for Darren from Brunswick, Ohio, who says, "Hi guys. Just wanted to first say I really enjoy your show. You give such thoughtful insight, free of so much of the snark that pervades the culture these days, so thank you for that. Since you were playing Deus Ex, I was wondering if either of you had played Prey." I believe he means 2017's Prey, and what your thoughts were on it. It's my favorite game from last year. Oh yeah, 2017. And vastly underrated in my opinion. I feel it is a masterclass in game and level design. There's so many ways to tackle various problems and a variety of ways to complete the game. Recent DLC is one of the most innovative and challenging add-ons I've ever played. Hope you guys didn't let this incredible game pass you by. Thanks for the great podcast, Darren, if that is your real name. That was, of course, sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. The reason I was holding this off is that we're actually going to play a bit of Prey for a bonus episode when we finish Deus Ex. And I have played a bit of it. It did not pass me by, although by the time I got back to it, I had injured myself, and so I was not able to play much more of it. But I will get in a healthy dose before we discuss it. I don't know whether you encountered it at all last year, Tim.
No, I actually have had it installed basically since it released, and have not fired it up yet. To be honest, it is. And when we decided to play it for a bonus episode, I just couldn't be more excited, because it gives me an excuse to finally fire it up. I am so excited to start playing it, because I am completely anticipating it will press all my buttons. I just love these games, and I have a lot of respect for that studio and a lot of the folks I know that worked on it. And it's a good. I'm really excited.
Oh, I am too. It's also, there are several people involved who were involved with the original Deus Ex. So, so it's got the DNA because it's got the same Frankenstein parents. I can't wait to discuss that with you. And I know you're going to get hooked and you're going to want to just keep playing.
So I hope so. I'm kind of looking for something to dive into right now. So
good. Yeah. So 2018 and 2019 can be the years of Prey, since 2015 through 2017 have been the years of The Witcher 3.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll take me a while, but.
All right. Well, next time we are actually going to finish Deus Ex. So we've come to the end of another fine episode. But we'll be finishing it off. And so next time we will be turning to our sort of takeaways, maybe tying off a few discussion elements. So there's some big story stuff that happens at the end. So there'll be some stuff to talk about there. We will probably talk about that because I know that is something that Warren Spector felt strongly about. He felt that one of those endings was really his ending, the ending he would choose or something like that. I know that came up at the time. So I'm curious to discuss those and see where you choose. I've seen all the endings. I saw all the endings the first time I played. But because I just saved and went and did them all, because that's what you do. Yeah, I'm curious. Anyway. Do you remember how it ended for you the first time? Did you also?
Yeah, that's why I went silent. I couldn't remember. No, I didn't go back and look at all the endings, I think, at the time. And I think the two times I finished it before, I think I actually chose the same ending for some silly reason. But I'm trying to think of what I did. I remember a sense of dread of some kind. Yeah, it's funny, I don't remember the details. So I just remember kind of
programmers.
Oh, is that an option?
Sort of.
Yeah, interesting.
Because we haven't talked about Icarus and Daedalus at all either, so we've got all that to talk about.
There's so many proper nouns in this game. There's just every level has a new important character added to it.
Mythology name soup. It's a lot. That's a lot. That's
even
actually
people.
That might be something. I know that might be something we want to talk about next time. Okay, well now we're digging into next week already. Let's call it there. Thanks all for joining us. You can find the podcast at DevGameClub, and of course, as I mentioned, you can shoot us email at devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Brett_Duville and him at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Have a good time playing games this week, and for now, good night.
Good night.